This is being eulogized today, right now at this very moment. And we send our condolences to his family. And we are sincerely and forever grateful for his support of this organization. At this time, we're going to move into our agenda for the program. Initially, we will have a word of prayer, and then we will introduce the 2022 Lens Committee. We will share the purpose of Lens and introduce the interviewers who will be interacting with the authors. We will have an introduction and presentation of the authors. And before going live with them, we want you, our audience, to participate in 2 literary challenges to win cash prizes. Instructions for each challenge will be given prior to each activity. Then we'll have an exciting live exchange and dialogue between authors and our interviewers. You, the audience, will also have the opportunity to chat in a question to any of the authors that you feel the need. Now, as mentioned earlier, we will have a word of prayer by Lens Committee member, Renee McCrary Holland.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us please bow our heads and place ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering all of us here today for this important event. May you bestow your guidance and blessings upon us so that we may enjoy and appreciate the significance in our lives. Bless everyone present today, that each may be able to identify what he or she has for your glory and honor. Grant good health and safety to loved ones in our collective homes, with peace and goodwill to all men. In your book of Proverbs, we reflect that the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even tempered. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. As we bring forth to present these gifts of speech through expressions of literary works today, may the various activities related to this celebratory occasion also be a success through your intervention. We give unto you all honor, glory, and praise, and we ask each of these things in the name of your precious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Renee. So at this time, let's introduce the 2022 Lens Committee members, and I'll introduce them in alphabetical order. We have Paula Applin, Rose Bean, Gail Greer, Maya McCrary, Renee McCrary Holland, Myrtle Parks, Dr. Rajam Ramamurthy, Betty Williams, and myself, Betty Williamson, all who reside in San Antonio, Texas. Also, I'd like to introduce and recognize the Executive Director of the San Antonio Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation, Dr. Tanja Nelson. She is the visionary of the foundation and whose support make this event possible.
Namaste. Good morning. I'm Dr. Rajam Ramamurthy, Professor Emeritus in the Department of Pediatrics at UT Health, and I am a Lens Committee member. Lens is an organization that creates a platform for published authors to showcase and market their literary works to various communities to explore and expose people to new ideas, to allow presentations of different views, and promote dialogue among diverse audiences with varied interests. In so doing, we hope to encourage literacy and authorship and lift literary awareness. We do this also through scholarships to deserving students in the local area of San Antonio. And your support of this will be greatly appreciated. Today, we have 3 distinguished guests who will be engaging in conversation with our featured authors with the purpose of getting to know more about their literary works. Our first panelist, Dr. Shawanda Riley, PhD. Dr. Shawanda Riley is a Fort Worth, Texas-based educator, speaker, and published author. He is an associate professor of English composition and literature at Tarrant County College in Hurst, Texas. Her doctoral research was centered on depictions of African American women in contemporary African American Christian fiction. Her academic research focuses on the area of faith, pop culture, and African American experience. She has made presentations on issues regarding racial equity and diversity at NCORE, the National Conference of Race and Ethnicity, and several other places. Our second panelist is Gianna De Pasquale. She's an inspiring journalist and a sophomore at MacArthur High School. Her plan is to attend San Antonio College to cover the basics, then transfer to UT Austin or Texas Tech, where she will major in journalism and communications. Our third panelist is Mrs. Sheila Ramanan. Mrs. Ramanan is a writer, a journalist, and a published author. She anchored 50 TV shows in Canadian Tamil entertainment television, TET. At present, she serves as a reporter to Dina Malar, a Tamil newspaper in Chennai, India. And many of you know that Chennai is a sister city to San Antonio. He's a radio announcer for New Zealand TV. Professionally, she's an art teacher here in San Antonio and works with oil and acrylic media. She's very active in the local Indian community, serving as a board member of the San Antonio Tamil Sangam. In addition, if you have questions for our authors, you are welcome to enter that in the chat to be presented to the authors. We will be watching this very closely, and it is our hope that you will want to know more on the books presented by supporting these authors with book purchases. Without further ado, let's get started with the program.
Thank you, Dr. Rajam. Okay, so we're first going to start with our first author's introduction, and this is going to be the run of the program, basically. We're going to introduce the author by reading their bio, and then we're going to have a short presentation, a video presentation of them telling us about their literary work. And we're going to have a conversation with our authors after we come back from our first literary challenge. So starting with our first author, Dr. O. Ray Atkins. Dr. O. Ray Atkins spent more than 3 decades as a public school teacher and administrator in San Antonio school districts. She concluded her career with recognition from the University of Texas at San Antonio as Principal of the Year. She obtained her bachelor's degree in English and speech from the University of Incarnate Word, a master's in curriculum and instruction from UTSA, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership from Texas A&M University. After leaving the school system, she served for several years as a consultant for AHA Process of Houston, Texas. In that role, she conducted nationwide workshops for educators from early childhood to college level in organizations that serve children and parents living in poverty. In 2009, we haven't gotten to 2029 yet. 2009, Dr. Atkins published Letters to My Father, The Gifts. The book is composed of letters to the father she never met. Her dad, Raphael Orville Beeson, was killed 4 months before her birth in a World War II naval explosion. The letters chronicles her journey from pain and grief to miraculous gifts and blessings. The new edition scheduled for release in 2022 is titled Letters to My Father, The Journey of a Gold Star Daughter. It is both historical and reflective on the impact of the Port Chicago explosion. Her first children's publication is When the Deer Rings Your Doorbell, and is penned as a delightful book children will want to read and share with the adults in their lives. Dr. Atkins is a luminary for InspireMeToday.com with 2 published articles, Why I Wore My Yellow Dress, and a self-reflection on The Beauty of the Butterfly, released in 2020. As an active member of Bethel African Methodist Church, she is also a member of the Ivy Readers Club, Book Club, and holds life memberships in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Inc., and the NAACP. Dr. Atkins resides in the San Antonio area and continues to give God the glory for all things in her life. Now we will hear her brief video.
Laura, we have no sound.
Now for the story. This is a story that changed the course of my life. It impacted me emotionally, physically, and it also has a historical significance that I want to share somewhat with you today. The story is about Port Chicago. It happened 3 months prior to my birth. My father was killed in a military naval explosion that took the lives of 320 men. Most of those men were African American. After the explosion, there was a mutiny, and after that, there was a desegregation of the Navy. It's a big story, and I won't try to go into it today. One of the things that I want to share with you is that that event had a significant impact on me, and I describe that impact in my book, Letters to My Father. One of the things that I want to share with you is that Letters to My Father is much bigger than I can capture for you today. And so I encourage you to read about the Port Chicago explosion. It still is going on today, and it is a significant part of our history. I want to share with you one of the letters that I wrote in Letters to My Father. And the book travels with me from early infancy all the way to present day, and still ongoing. Even in this present day, I am still doing research, I'm still writing, I'm still finding more and more about Port Chicago, and therefore learning more and more about my father and more about myself. I want to share with you one of the letters, and it's titled Journey to Your Name. Until I reached the age of 18, nearly every application I completed included a section for parental information. As I matured, this simple and common task continued to present a nagging challenge, and I didn't understand why. My earliest memory of completing a form was when I was registering for school. When I got to the part about father's name, I was uncertain as to what to do. I asked my mom, and she said, just write deceased. And so I did that. I could very well tell that deceased was not his name, it was not his address, but I continued to write the word deceased. This is the journey piece that I discuss in the book, because the word deceased disturbed me. It further disturbed me that I never called my father's name. And so as a result of the journey piece, I wrote the letter in calling your name. And this is a piece from that letter. Each time I wrote the word deceased in place of your name, I had denied half of my birthright. It was understandable act of a child who wanted to be obedient. But why I continued the practice as an adult, I don't have an answer, not even an excuse. On my wedding invitation and other occasions where parents were recognized, I listed only my mother's name, as if she was the only person responsible for my birth. I regret the many times I did not celebrate you or thank God for you on Father's Day, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and other occasions. I acted as your being dead had no place in my life. I was a product of two wonderful parents, and yet gave distinction and recognition only to my mother. I should have been claiming your name to the world. Unintentionally, I ignored opportunities to recognize you as the wonderful man and the one who would always be my father. I wanted to share that little piece with you from my book. And in the second revised portion of the book, I'll talk more about the journey, the research, the agony, perhaps a little bit about my mother's story, and certainly more about the story of Port Chicago and its impact, not on me, but on civil rights, integration, and racial disturbances that we even see today. So I thank you for the opportunity. I'm grateful to Lynn for allowing me to come before you. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is
May I begin with a quote to introduce our next author. Oh, black pearl of color, you are fearless, calm, and few. You bring a smile to everyone who cast their eyes on you. End of quote. I smiled and thought, how lucky I am to be introducing the person who penned those beautiful words. Mrs. Julia M. Hartfield is a retired educator and a successful businesswoman. She made history as the first Black teacher in the Lavernia Independent School District in Lavernia, Texas. She co-owned a child development center with her late husband, David Hartfield Jr. Mrs. Hartfield graduated from Austin County High School in Sealy, Texas, and attended Prairie View A&M University, where she received both her bachelor's and master's degrees in education. Her teaching career has touched Las Vegas public schools and the Austin, San Antonio, and Lavernia public schools. She served as director of Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, outreach ministry in San Antonio, and provided humanitarian services to countless people. She's a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and a Gold Life member of the NAACP. At the young age of 89, she has published her first book, a collection of poems from this side of heaven. Let's welcome author and poet, Mrs. Julia Hartfield.
I'm Julia Hartfield, and the title of my book is From Julia with Love, a collection of poems from this side of heaven. I started seriously writing poems in high school to fill my days when there was not a lot of work to do. I continued writing as the years passed. I realized that I'm still writing at the age of 89 years old. My daughter, Liddy Brown, who is a writer and a publisher, decided that it was time for me to publish my own work. As life events happen, the Lord would wake me up and drop a poem in my spirit. I'm sure that I have written, read, and shared hundreds of poems over the years. The poems that I chose for this book can be shared with anyone. This collection of poems are a reflection of a family, God's love, and the mysteries of life. I pray these poems will put a smile on your face, laughter in your heart, and bring you comfort during these challenging times. Thank you. I'm Julia Hartfield.
And at this time, I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing our next author, Dr. Sandra Mayo. Dr. Sandra Mayo is Professor Emeritus from Texas State University in San Marcos. There, she served as Director of both graduate studies for the Department of Theater and Dance and the Center for Multicultural and Gender Studies. She has also served as the Director of Theater and Fine Arts at St. Philip's College and Dean of Arts and Sciences. In 1997, she was inducted into the San Antonio Women's Celebration Hall of Fame in Creative Arts. Dr. Mayo's recent theater
One of the last
publications
families in the
include-
entire country to be let go from slavery.
Excuse me, Beverly.
My
could you-
family was one of the last families
Beverly
to get
Johnson.
word that we
Beverly
were
Johnson.
free. The Mills family in Galveston, Texas,
Beverly.
in Brazoria County.
I knew it had to be Texas. That's where Juneteenth came from.
Ms. Beverly Johnson, please turn your phone off.
Okay, are we ready? Let me start over. I have the great honor and the privilege to introduce our third author for the day, Dr. Sandra Mayo. Dr. Sandra Mayo is Professor Emeritus from Texas University in San Marcos. There she served as Director of both graduate studies for the Department of Theater and Dance and the Center for Multicultural and Gender Studies. She has also served as the Director of Theater and Fine Arts at St. Philip's College and Dean of Arts and Sciences. In 1997, she was inducted into the San Antonio Women's Celebration and Hall of Fame in Creative Arts. Dr. Mayo's recent theater publications include Black History Plays, an annotated bibliography, and Frederick Douglass, Reflections on a Struggle for Freedom. She co-authored with Dr. Elvin Holt her 2016 publication, Stages of Struggle and Celebration, a production history of Black theater in Texas, and co-edited with Holt in 2014, Acting Up and Getting Down, Plays by American Texans. That sounds like a really interesting book. Love to read that one. Her website showcases highlights of her research on Black theater in Texas, as well as her BTIT publishing company. She has done phenomenal work on multiculturalism. As the director of Texas State Center for Multicultural and Gender Studies, she spearheaded and co-edited a multicultural reader, integrating multiculturalism into the curriculum, from the liberal arts to the sciences. In addition, she founded and led the Multicultural Curriculum Transformation and Research Institute for faculty. She also launched the peer-reviewed Journal of Research on Women and Gender Studies and the annual Women and Gender International Research Symposium. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri, attended public schools in Manhasset, Long Island, New York, and earned her PhD from Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. That's a mouthful. Now we will hear the video of Dr. Sandra Mayo.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sandra Mayo, and I am a theater historian, and I'm also a retired administrator and professor from Texas State University in San Marcos. And I am so grateful for the opportunity given to me by the Lens Organization for Literary Empowerment Summit to share with you my latest book, Black History Plays, 1823 to 2020, an annotated bibliography. Now, my bibliography is published by BTIT Publishing on my Black Theater in Texas website, and it's published as an ebook. Now, the annotated bibliography is a reference book. It's for public schools, for universities, for community organizations, community theaters, scholars, playwrights, anyone interested in pursuing greater knowledge of African-American literature and culture through the lens of theater. So I'm going to share my screen and show you the book. The contents include 4 parts: the introduction, part 1 with 65 plays written between 1823 through the 1960s. Part 2, 168 plays written between 1970 through the 2021s, or through 2021, I should say, and appendix, which is a list of one-act musicals and major topics. So I'm going to show you the book. You go to my website and it will come up as a flip book, and it'll look like this. Now, you may navigate through the flip book using the arrows on the side, and there are navigation tools also at the bottom of the page. My favorite is this one because it brings up pages, and you can go to any particular page that you want to quickly in the book. And this takes me to the first section, the annotations for the plays between 1823 and the 1960s. So the flip book. I'm really excited about sharing this with you. There's so many Black history plays, as you can see from the count I already gave you on the last screen. Oh, I found over 200 of them. Now, the history plays are in 3 different forms, or 3 different genres, we'll say, in the field. And the historical drama is the most popular, most prolific in the collection. And it's a combination of fact and fiction. And that means that it's based on history and real people, real events from history. But the playwright often has to create the dialogue and some of the personal interactions. So a combination of fact and fiction. And here you see an annotation from the book of The African Company Presents Richard III by Carlisle Brown. And this was written in 1988, was based on an event that happened in the 1800s, actually about 1820, 1821. And the cast was 4 Black men, 2 white men, and 2 Black females, the length 2 acts, produced in 1988 by the Penumbra Theater in Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, and it's been published by the Dramatist Play Company. You can see from the center here that it was actually produced recently in 2016. Actually, there are probably more productions after this one, but this is a scene from a 2016 production of the play at the American Players Theater. Now, the second type is a documentary drama, often called verbatim theater because often written verbatim from court records, newspaper articles, autobiographies, interviews, and other factual accounts with what actually people said as part of the event. And Anna Deavere Smith wrote Twilight Los Angeles in 1992, one of her many documentary plays. She interviewed over 300 people, and she created this piece for one woman, 4 diverse characters, and she played all the characters. It was opened in 1994, went to Broadway, and she played all the parts, and here's a scene with her in some of the, as some of the characters. The third type is the historical pageant, narration with museum-like vignettes, displays, mimes, short scenes. And here is an example from The Star of Ethiopia, written in 1912 by W.E.B. Du Bois, produced in 1913 for about 50 to 100 people. Now you can see from the broadside in the center that when it was produced in 1916, there were 1,010 actors in costume. And here's some of the actors in costume as part of the piece. So the historical pageant, the third type. And so finally, to summarize, Black history plays, historical drama, documentary drama, or historical pageants share and display African-American history and culture, but they entertain and educate as they do. Now, my book, The Black History Plays 1823 to 2020s, is a guide to this work. And it's a tool for discovering, accessing, and experiencing these plays or this history through the literary and performing arts. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I hope you all are just as excited as I am to hear more from these 3 wonderful, outstanding authors. But before we get to that, we'll be inviting you as our audience to participate in our first literary challenge. So I present to you now Myrtle Parks and Paula Applin as they will give instructions and directions concerning our first literary challenge.
Well, hello, audience. You certainly are being a wonderful sport this morning. And you've been listening to a lot that's been going on. So it's now time for you to participate. During our intermission, we will give away a $25 cash prize. This is during our literary challenge. The first person to type the complete and correct answer in one chat response will win. The winner will be contacted by mailing instructions in order to receive the directions and receive your prize. We remind you now to keep your mics muted. Paula, are we ready to monitor those chat boxes as I deliver the first question? Your first question is, she was introduced and her talent was shared with America during the Biden inauguration. She has written the latest bestseller, Call Us What We Carry. Name the poet and the name of the poem she rendered during the inauguration. I believe we have a winner.
Well, the winners did not answer. We wanted the name of the poem and the poet. Some just put the poet, not the name. No one has put the correct answer in yet.
We have the name of the poet, but not the name of the poem.
Yes. All right. We got 2 new messages, so let's see. All right. Yes, we do have a winner.
Okay, Miss Pollock. Who is this lucky winner?
The winner was one of our poets, one of our authors. Ray Atkins put the name of the poet and the poem.
Okay. All right. Because our poet is Amanda Gorman, and the name of the poem is The Hill We Climb. And congratulations to our author winner, Miss Atkins. And I do believe we have the contact information to make sure that we get your prize to you. Now, I remind everyone to keep your mics on mute as we go to Shawana Riley and our first panelist interview with the authors.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this program. I'm excited, even though I live in Hurst, Texas. I am a native of San Antonio, and so it's great to see familiar faces and familiar names. And it's also wonderful to see all of these authors at various stages of their life sharing their voice, sharing their truth, and sharing their legacy. So I'm excited to kind of kick things off with a few questions. I'm going to start with Ray Atkins, and we've already heard a little bit about her sharing about her book, Letters to My Father. But I'm going to start off with question number 4 from our list of questions, Ray. And I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about the journey that led you to writing your book. You gave us some details in the video, but can you just kind of give us a little more information about what got you started?
Yes, thank you for asking. I was curious about the death of my father. Of course, back in 1944, there was very little communication. And so as I formed letters in my mind of things that I would say to him, I decided I would write those letters. And of course, in order to learn the circumstances, I had to do some history. And so that began my journey.
Well, can I do a quick follow-up? What made you decide to use the form of letters in writing and kind of forming the narrative structure?
Well,
the book?
I do journaling for one thing, and then I am by profession a English teacher, and so that was the only thing I could think of to do to communicate with him was to write letters to him, and so that's the venue that I took.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pitch it to Sheila for the next question.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rajam Ramamurthy for this wonderful opportunity to work in LENS, this literary summit. Here, I'm very happy to meet all my co-panelists, Shivanta and Gianna, and the great, great authors. Authors, you are not only a simple word authors, you are creators. Anyone can speak hours together, days together, but writing, they cannot. Writing is a special skill. A word after a word after a word is powerful. In this way, big salute to all the authors. Here, my first question is to Julia. I like your poems because I love to write. When writing your poems, have you ever been a poem that unexpectedly surprised you in content or emotions? Can you release your, yeah.
Yes. The poems that I write are poems that I guess I just say pop in my head. They pop in my spirit. And when I write, I just get up and write. If I don't write at the time, it doesn't matter what time of night or day. If I don't do it then it leaves. And that poem never comes back. So I learned how to do that. And that's what I do.
Okay, thank you. Lovely. And next, I pass my question next to Gianna.
Hello, thank you. It really is a great honor being here and having this opportunity to speak to well-accomplished authors and women in society. My question is question number 5 for Dr. Sandra Mayo. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your book and more in detail of how you think your writing can apply to our society as a whole and for other people.
Well, my book is a little different from the others because it's not a creative piece based on my own creative writing. It is taking several authors and the creative work they've done and making their work accessible to others. So the Black History play has been a part of my life, but part of my journey, my scholastic journey, my teaching journey. And so what I do with this collection of history plays is share the stories told by these writers about the culture, writing from the 1800s to the present. They've talked about heroes and sheroes and particular events in our history. So it's a way of remembering our history and reimagining our history for our society today to learn from it and to be entertained by it.
Thank you. That actually is a really great way to explain the kind of historical context that you give with your book. All right, I'm going to pass the next question to Shawanda.
All right, thank you, Gianna. And I'm going to go back to Ray Atkins. And you shared earlier about how writing your book helped you to kind of deal with some of the issues relating to the death of your father. And so we get a pretty good idea of how that impacted you personally. So my question is, what's the main thing that you want the reader to learn from your book? Do you want them to get a similar sense of maybe connection when they read your book?
I have 2 goals in mind. One is to help understand a history that we're still living, and that's based on racial biases. And number 2, to understand the emotions or the trials and tribulations that families go through as a result of loss. And mine happened to be a Gold Star daughter. The second part of this book is going to be letters to my father the journey of a Gold Star daughter. And so if I can quickly just say the second piece is historical, looking at racial prejudices from the 1800s all the way to what we're dealing with today. It really captures what I see as my Sankofa moment in talking about my life, the life of the men in Port Chicago, and our lives today. I hope I answered your question.
You did, but I just want to kind of circle back because you talked about the historical piece, and there's so many contemporary examples that we have of issues with racial and social justice. So are you hoping that people that read that part of the book now draw a connection to what happened back then and to maybe doing some things differently in our contemporary times?
Yes. One of the things that I want us to do is to always retell the story. And our stories are lengthy. And they start from way back from slavery, and they have not changed as of today. And it's important for us to see that, because if we don't retell the story, we will forget and we may not react properly. And so it does have a long-term effect. And that is my purpose in doing so.
All right, perfect. That's a great answer. And I'm going to pitch it. Thank you, Faye, Ray Atkins. And I'll pitch it back to Sheila.
Yes, authors are giving very great and wonderful answers. Again, shall I go to Julia, this question? And here, every poets have their own close to heart poems, right? So in this way, which is your favorite poem in your book? Can you tell, please?
I think the main purpose is to touch people, the heart and the lives of people. When I write everything with a story, and you can see yourself in the poems that I write. So if you have a problem with family or family members, then you can find a poem that will probably do some healing for you.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, the touching the heart means definitely it's close to our emotions, right? Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm pausing the next question to Gianna.
Thank you. My next question is for Dr. Mayo. I was wondering if you could tell us about the emotions of writing a book and if you think that strong emotions are necessary for good writing.
Well, certainly my work is not about my emotions being translated on the page, but it's about the emotions of the many authors that I'm making available and making people aware of in the collection. And I should say at this point that I put this book together because most of my career, I have been a consultant for the Black History Play. I've often been asked, especially around Black History Month, can I recommend the Black History Play? So I kept collecting the plays. And so now I have over 200 plays. And before I retired, I said, I need to do something with this to make this full list available to people. And because these plays are about emotions, I want to mention Celeste Bedford Walker. One of her plays that I annotate in the collection is about Camp Logan. Camp Logan is about a military riot in Houston, Texas in 1917. And she has 6 soldiers who were caught up in this riot who were mistreated in 1970 by the white community and provoked into retaliating or defense that led to their being actually court-martialed and executed. So great deal of emotion involved in that piece. And she knew the events. She did the who, what, where, and when. She didn't actually meet the characters, but she wrote what I call historical drama, fact and fiction. She had the facts, but she created a story of these soldiers in the barracks reacting to what was happening to them. So emotional as they talked about how insulted they felt by a lot was going on. And so emotional when you see how they support each other through the struggle and support each other as they decided that they must sacrifice their lives. It's necessary to protect their dignity. So emotion is involved in writing plays, and I am showcasing plays. And if you take any of these plays, you'll find great emotion involved in the pieces that help you to understand and appreciate. And if you're looking for examples of courage, you'll find them in a lot of this work.
That's really great. It really is making me excited about that book because it really looks really very interesting and I'm sure has a lot of beautiful stories in it. So thank you. I'll pass the next question up to Shawanda.
All right, thanks, Gianna. And I've got one last question. Before I go into my last question for Ray, we want to remind everybody that's listening to this fantastic conversation. If you have a question for any of the authors, we want to encourage you to post the question in the chat. We are happy between myself and Sheila and Gianna to ask the question for you. If you just type it in there, we still have some time because we want to add everybody's voice to this fantastic literary conversation. All right, Ray, I got one more question. You told us about the book and how it dealt with like a historical event. So can you share a little more about how you did your historical research to kind of piece together the things that happened so long ago? Did you Google? Did you go to Wikipedia? What were some of the sources and the strategies that you used?
I went everywhere.
Okay.
At the time of 9/11, I was on my way to the Pentagon to begin my research. And so that happened. And so on the 23rd of that month, I was in the Naval Research Archives in College Park, Maryland. That's one of the main places I went because I got to look at records. I got to talk to folks who had been part of World War II. I went to the archives in, I think it's Bajo, California. I visited 3 times the site where my father died, and I've been given a flag there, and I've been at commemoration services. I had the opportunity to talk with men who were there that night, but actually did not die because they were not on the ships. And so I did interviews with them. I also, as a consultant, I was traveling nationwide, and I'd go in a day ahead of time to go into the libraries to read what was written in their mind about what happened at Port Chicago. And of course, I did a bit of Googling. I talked to attorneys that were involved in the lawsuits against the men that were charged with mutiny. My family was a bit concerned because I went over the top. And so, but it has taken me on a journey that I can share with others, and with a goal of highlighting how racial violence and racial indifference has impacted us all across the years and is still doing so. And also, I want to be a model for children and anybody else who happens to come across an event. Take your time, look at it, research it, think about it, and then write about it.
All right, great. Thanks for sharing your journey. You know, so many people want to write books, and for people who say, I have an idea, they don't know where to get started. But the fact that you started with your own personal story and then actually went to visit that place, those many places, actually gives maybe some fledgling writers out in the audience some insight on how they can also share their own family story as well. So thank you for that answer. And I'm going to pitch it back to Sheila.
Yes, like Shanda said, everybody's answer is coming like arrows. Okay. Here, one common question anyone can answer. When you develop a story in your mind, are you able to deliver as it is, or you need to filter any information while writing? It's common for 3 authors. Ray, can you release your mute?
Filtering my information through others has been quite helpful because it's a way of getting at the true story and just kind of analyzing whether or not you're being rational in what you're doing or not. Because you are putting part of yourself into your writing. Your writing may start as with me, with a personal question, because my personal question was, what happened to my father? And so that filtering is very important.
Sure, true. Yes. Next, I pass to Gianna. Do you have any questions? Please ask.
Yes, thank you. So one question is that, writing a book can seem like a very, long and difficult task, and something that, can often be stressful or, just monumental. And so I was wondering if, there was anyone who supported you through your journey of writing your book. And this is for any of the authors to answer.
I will be happy to answer that question because my book I'm most proud of, and the work that I'm most proud of, is my work on Black theater in Texas. And it took about 5 or 6 years to get that book out. And when I decided to do the work, I approached my colleague, Dr. Eldon Hope, because I knew that was going to be a major research project, that we were going to have to travel the state. And so I'm so happy that I did that, because I had him as a sounding board. We supported each other. We studied Black theater in the 5 major cities of Texas. And so we traveled together to those places. We interviewed people together. We interviewed people by telephone. He would write part of it and I would critique what he wrote, and I would write part and he critiqued what I'd written. And together we developed 2 books on Black theater in Texas that have been considered groundbreaking because the work was not out there already. I went to many theater conferences and looked through many books, and often they didn't mention the Black playwrights in Texas, or they didn't mention the Black theaters in Texas. So we filled a gap, and we did that together. And I think over the 5 or 6 year journey of making that happen, the support that we gave each other was so important. At the end of it, I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm surprised he's still talking to me," after asking him to get involved in the project that was so intense. So there was so much work uncovering. We actually donated over 6,000 documents to the archives at Texas State as a result of our research. And that was just a tip of what was out there that we had to look at.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great that, someone was there helping you out through all of that. And I had no idea about, how long of a process that could be. I will pass the next question to Shawanda.
All right, thank you, Gianna. I love all the talk about all the research that you've gone through, whether it's going all around the state for finding out plays or traveling out around the country for information about your family. This question actually comes from the chat, and this is for Miss Julia. So I'm going to ask her to open up her mic and her video. The question is, what is your favorite poem? And I'm going to add something to it. Who is your favorite poet? Doesn't have to be the same person. Could be, 2 different people, but.
Well, I tell you what, my favorite poem in my book is Black Pearl. And I think I like it because I was a member of the society, Black Pearl Society, that we had here in San Antonio. And I wrote that as a invitation in. So it was just something that I kept in my memory all this time. And the poet that I'm trying to go back, because the poets that we did when I was younger, and the poets that you have to memorize. And at that time, you had to memorize everything that was written. So that's why I don't really have a favorite, because I go so far back and I think about fourscores and the years ago that we had to do. So all of those were taught to me. And that's the way I look at it now. I just love poetry and I love poets.
All right, that's great. Thank you for that wonderful answer. And I'm going to pitch it back to Sheila.
Yes, One lovely question came from Rose Bean. When writing your material, do you have a special place that inspires you to write, back porch or hotel or any particular place? This question for all the authors. Anyone can tell. Any special place?
I don't, if I'm understanding right, I don't think I had any special place but I always needed the quiet time. And the quiet time is when things would come in my head. If something popped in and it was not a quiet time, then I would ease out from the group or wherever I was and just make a note of the poem. And then I would go back. And then there it would come back to me what it was all about. So that's kind of the way I do poetry.
Okay. Atkins, can you tell your favorite place or any spot?
Yes, I had a spot in my dining room that I kept ready to write. And I did have a coach who had expectations that I would have X number of pages written. You see this on TV, but it really is necessary. And I kept a tablet with me, like Julia, all the time. And if I was washing dishes and something came to me, I'd go and write it down. And so there is a method to it for me, having a space, recording the ideas as soon as they come. And then one of the things that I would do, I kept yellow tablets. As I use that thought, I draw a line through it. But I'd always go back and be sure that that thought had been placed somewhere. And so there is a need for me. There was a need for a process in order for me to write.
Great. Lovely answers. Anything special for you, Sandra?
Well, I did a lot of my writing. I do a lot of my writing at the computer. In fact, I'm at the computer too much. And so at the end of the day, my eyes are often red. But I do find that it's important to keep a notepad close by wherever you go, when you go to bed at night. So often kept, pen and paper, because sometimes when I'm in the midst of writing, what I'm trying to say comes to me when I'm away from the computer. So, and I find that if I don't write it down right away, when I get to the computer, I forget how I said it. And usually I say it just right, just the way I want to say it, but I'm not at the computer. So I've learned over time to write the thought down immediately as I have it. And so that I have it when I go to the computer, the way I worded it in my creative thoughts away from my writing instrument. So,
okay. Okay, thank you. I think Rosebean, you got the answer, I think. Okay, next I'm pausing to Gianna.
Thank you. This actually is a question that I saw in the chat from Isabel Brown. It's for you, Dr. Mayo. She's asking, which play do you think is the most important to African American history and the one that should be studied in schools?
Well, see, that's a difficult question because, again, I've collected over 200 plays, but I must be self-serving and say that my own play, Frederick Douglass, Reflections on a Struggle for Freedom, is a really good one for the public schools because Frederick Douglass was a slave who escaped from self-taught, taught himself to read and write, escaped from slavery, and began working with the abolitionist movement, became one of their best speakers, and wrote his autobiography. And before his life was over, he wrote 3 versions of his autobiography, and so eloquent on so many important subjects related to the racial struggle and pride and all kinds of important issues. And so my play, Frederick Douglass, Reflections on a Struggle for Freedom, is a documentary drama introducing students to Douglass in his own words. And he tells a story as a slave, an important moment in his life when he discovered how important reading and writing was. His mistress, one of his slave mistresses, was teaching him how to read. And her husband came in and said, "Oh, no, stop that. Don't teach him to read and write. It will unfit him to be a slave." He said that was a watershed moment that made him realize, okay, if education unfits me to be a slave, then that's exactly what I want. And then he took that little knowledge that she taught him, and he found books, he read newspapers, he tricked kids on the street to help him, and he learned to read and write. And he is one of the most inspirational writers in American history. So I have written it's 5 scenes, and I think all are inspirational. But the important thing is I wrote this with public school students in mind. And we actually have, it was the last time it was produced, it was at Texas State, and it was part of a research grant on history in the schools. And so we did a teacher's guide. So we have the play, it can be done in at least an hour. There's a teacher's guide to it. And there's so many significant educational moments that will inspire our young people. They need to know Frederick Douglass. They must know Frederick Douglass. It can't be erased with this critical race theory. And so Frederick Douglass, Reflections on the Struggle for Freedom. It's available on my website as an ebook, and I'm going to publish it in the print version of this bibliography that I hope will come out soon. I'm adding some plays to it. It's a full text of some of the plays. So, but there are a lot of wonderful plays that will be good for the school system. Some of them are too long because usually they want a 1-hour piece. So that's my long answer, and I'll cut at this time.
Thank you. That was actually a really good question, and I will think about that, because that's something that I have wondered too. Is how much of these different cultures and backgrounds in history are we incorporating into our schools? So thank you so much. I'll pass the next question to Shawanda.
All right, so we have had such a wonderful conversation. I hate to say these next words, which is we're going to have to end this part of the program. I would say everybody give the panelists and the authors a round of applause. I know that's kind of corny, but it's been just so wonderful, as a writer and as a reader and as someone who teaches literacy and teaches English. It's so amazing to be around people that know the power of the written word. And so I just would like to thank our authors that were on the program today, Ray Atkins, Julia Hart, and Sandra Mayo, for their, okay, can y'all open up your cameras just so we can see your beautiful faces again, for sharing your talents, sharing your vision, sharing your legacy of words with us. And also would like to thank my fellow panelists, Sheila and Gianna. It's been wonderful having just a great conversation. This is the beautiful thing about technology. We don't even have to be in the same city, but we can still have a great conversation. And I would just like to thank once again Lens and the committee for allowing myself to be a part of this fantastic event. I am going to give it back to Dr. Rajam and then to Ms. Betty Williamson as we continue on with the program. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Wow, thank you all so much. Once again, that was just awesome. That was definitely worth the wait. So thank you all so much. I just have to reiterate something that I learned through the conversation and just hearing you all. Dr. Ray Atkins said something early on. She says, retelling the stories. And I thought that was just a common theme throughout everything that all of you all said. I wrote a couple of things down here. She talked about retelling the stories, and talking about retelling that, she says, so that we don't forget, because we may forget if we don't retell those stories, right? And then Miss Julia, she stated, I write everything with a story. She says stories are healing. So it's once again, just not forgetting those stories and retelling the stories. And Dr. Mayo, she said that she writes about emotions. It's the emotions of others. And with the collection of plays that she has, she says retelling the stories, retelling of the emotions of the things that the people went through. She says these are examples of courage of being retold. The example of courage is being retold. So this is just awesome. And I really can't wait to read that book by Frederick Douglass that you just told us about. I mean, that just sounds so wonderful and so exciting. And I am a reader. I am always constantly reading. So thank you all so very much. I mean, that was just really awesome. But also to the audience now at this time, we want to encourage you to visit the website of these authors and purchase their inspiring works, okay? Anything that you heard that sparked your interest or anything, hopefully you were inspired by that today, and go to their websites, contact them through social media, and support them, you know, in their works. These are people that are out there doing the hard work and putting their effort into educating us, and we just thank them so much. Also, in addition, we want to make sure that you remember that the purpose of this event today is also for the support of the MLK, Dr. Martin Luther King Foundation. So also, if you find it in your heart, please go to that website also at www.mlksanantonio.org, and you can also make your donations there as well. Okay. And I'll pitch it over to Dr. Rajam.
Do we have the second literary challenge?
Yes, we do. So first, I would like to correct our last literary question. I am so used to seeing Betty Williamson's name and did not recognize her daughter's name, and she really was our first winner. So Dr. Atkins, we recognize that we said you were the winner, but we're going to have to give it to B. Williamson, which is the daughter of Betty Williamson, who really was the first one in the chat. And I thought it was our Betty, and I was saying, she can't answer. So I am sorry, Brandy, that I overlooked you, but she was our original and first answer on the first question. So now we have a chance for the second question. And it is, the author is a regular panelist on the talk show The View. Her latest book has its background setting, Martha's Vineyard. Name the book and the author. The author is a regular panelist on the talk show The View. Her latest book has its background setting, Martha's Vineyard. Name the book and the author. Let me go to chat to see. Come on, literary scholars. You may know her name, but may not know her book. I don't see an answer out here yet. Anybody? Let's see, 2 messages. Okay. One of our, the first answer came from one of our panelists, which was Shawanda Riley. Has Sunny Houston and the book Summer in the Bluffs. That is correct. And so then Shawanda is our second literary challenge winner. This has been a very exciting and awesome day. And so we'll give you back to, we have your information already, Shawanda. So I'm going to give it back to Dr. Rajan.
Thank you, Paula and Myrtle, for adding that extra punch to this show, which enables the audience to participate. And we hope in the coming years, we'll be able to do more and more of that. we are coming to the end of this wonderful session. In closing of the program, we will have closing remarks from Rose Holden Bean, who is the lead member for the Literary Empowerment Network Summit. Rose?
Hi, thank you all so much for attending. And on behalf of the San Antonio Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation and LENS Literary Empowerment Network and Summit, it has been a pleasure to have you spend a portion of your Saturday with us. Your participation in this audience ensures us that LENS can continue to succeed in LENS goals. We want to give a special thanks, though, to all of our, believe it or not, everyone that works with us are volunteers. We have a cadre of volunteers, our LENS committee members. We want to give them a special thanks, certainly to our authors and definitely to our panelists. We are thanking you right now, though, in advance for your contributions and your donations because they continue to help us realize our goals. But right now, we're going to give you just a special treat. We have a young author. I need her to get ready, begin to unmute and turn your camera on. And I need you to listen for just a brief moment to, if we had a drum roll, it would be Deborah Walton, and she'll tell you her name. She'll give you a little bit of information, but she is actually a published author. Deborah, where are you?
We're here. Hi, everybody.
Keep talking, Deborah. Tell us about yourself.
Hello, my name is Deborah Walton. I'm 8 years old in the 2nd grade at Ideal Waltham School. I wrote my book, I See a Red Bus, when I was just 4 years old. I told my mom this story and she wrote it down. Later, we draw pictures and sent to be printed. Now it is for sale. Thank you, LENS, for this opportunity. Parents, Michael and Michelle Walton.
If we could do as Dr. Sharonda Riley, thank you, Deborah. As Dr. Sharonda Riley said, it sounds a little corny, but if we could do, some claps, some chats, I don't know what we do on social media, but Deborah, thank you so much. So Deborah, now you can turn your mic off, ma'am, and your video, but we appreciate you so much. That Deborah is one of our youngest authors, and one of LEN's desire is to begin to cultivate and work with young authors. And so we're excited to just give you a snippet, just a little bit of what we are looking forward to beginning to do with LENS and to expand our platform, not just from seasoned authors, but to some of our youngest authors. So Deborah, again, thank you. And again, on behalf of LENS and the San Antonio Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation, we do appreciate your time and your patience with us. And if you don't remember anything else, we want you to remember a lot of things, but we would like for you to donate. Thanks again. And we'll see you next year. Betty?
That concludes our program for today. So as Rose has stated, we'll see you next year. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, LENS. And thank you, panelists. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed it.
MLKSanAntonio.org.
Everyone can